Welcome to Dangerous Ideas. I'm Lee Camp. Please, everyone, click the thumbs up. Why not? We got a big show, a lot of important stuff going on. Much of it horrifying, but some of it funny. that should be the name of my show. Much of it horrifying, but some of it funny. Lot to cover on this show. I have some episodes, where it's a lot about reading headlines, and some episodes where it's a lot about watching and tearing apart videos. And this one is one of those video ones where we're gonna watch videos of Boris Johnson making a fool of himself about Iran. We're gonna tear apart Piers Morgan. We're gonna tear apart other people. Ron DeSantis for his hilarious U-turn in his press conference. Anyway, all of that's coming up in just a minute. Some updates. Israel is bombing Beirut. Obviously, Lebanon, they're bombing Lebanon, they're bombing Beirut, they're bombing UN peacekeepers. They're trying to kill as many UN personnel as possible, apparently, which, by the way, they have killed more UN personnel than any conflict ever. But the latest from Al Jazeera is that Israel is urging UN peacekeepers in Lebanon to move north after firing on their positions. So basically, they don't want the UN observing what they're doing, because when you're committing war crimes left and right, you don't really want observers for the international community, Okay, yeah. When you're doing illegal things, you don't often want an audience, and so they've been firing on UN personnel to try and get them to leave. They say our recommendation is that UNIFIL, which is the UN organization in Lebanon, relocate 3 miles north to avoid danger as fighting intensifies, and while the situation along the blue line remains volatile as a result of Hezbollah's aggression. As a result of Hezbollah's aggression, we're going to shoot at you. That makes sense. We're going to shoot at the UN as a result of Hezbollah's aggression. Thursday's incident in which 2 Indonesian peacekeepers were injured is the most serious report by the mission since it said last week it had rejected Israeli demands to relocate from some of its positions. So basically, the UN said, no, we're not leaving. We're going to keep watching you. And they said, okay, we're going to start shooting you. So that sounds like a country has nothing to hide, right? But another serious note, a U.S. journalist has now been arrested by Israel. This is a journalist who works with the Gray Zone. I don't know whether the Gray Zone considers him a contractor or what, but and I played some of his clips on this show not that long ago when he was basically at the Gaza border, and he was talking to Israelis who had come to the Gaza border to stop food from getting through to children. So these are not IDF. These are just average citizens in Israel doing their part to make sure children starve to death. Just doing their part to help murder children. And he was down there talking to them. And it was one of those things where he didn't have to say much. You just hold a camera in front of these lunatics and everything they say is horrifying. So now he's been arrested. This is from Aaron Mate. According to Israel's Ynet News, Israel is charging journalists enemy during wartime and providing information to the enemy for reporting on the Israeli military targets hit by Iran earlier this month. Now, I can't remember if I reported on it. I reported on the Iran strike, but I don't remember if I covered the fact that Israel had made it illegal in Israel to, if you tell the world that Iran's missiles actually hit, which they did, then that's illegal and we can lock you up for a good long time just for doing journalism. Israel is detaining and prosecuting an American journalist for journalism. And Aaron Mate asks, will his media colleagues defend him? They're claiming that he endangered national security by reporting the truth. Boy, does that sound familiar? The charges against him include aiding the enemy during wartime, providing information to the enemy. His arrest has raised concerns of potential diplomatic incident between Israel and the U.S. because of his status as a foreign journalist. Representatives from the U.S. Embassy attended the Jerusalem Magistrates Court for a hearing on the request of the police to extend his detention. And before we had this information, he'd just been black bagged. I mean, the people didn't know where he'd gone. He just stopped. All contact was cut off. And I think someone else who was arrested with him said they were beaten. But yeah, he was sailing with John in the chat is saying he was heavily beaten before the arrest. This is the free and fair democracy of Israel, right? This is the you get to have freedom and democracy, unlike anywhere else in the Middle East. Israel is beating and arresting journalists like Jeremy Lafredo. And then the added part of this story is that where is the rest of the mainstream? I mean, this should be a massive international incident. You should have mainstream media figures across the land furious that a journalist would be arrested for reporting journalism. But as we saw with Julian Assange, these people in the mainstream media and your corporate media are cowards. It works. It works actually both ways, whether you actually say the word or you censor yourself, because they're cowards, because they're cowards. They are the top of all cowards. They are cowards, and they don't defend their colleagues, because the colleagues that get arrested and get locked up, like Julian Assange, are the ones who did not play the corporate media game. They didn't agree to censor for the empire. And same with Jeremy Lafredo. Same with so much of the great work that Gray Zone has been doing. And, for those of you keeping track, this is one of the many attacks against Gray Zone for their reporting. I don't even think I could list them all, but Kit Clarenberg was arrested in the UK and held for 5 hours and all of his devices stolen. And of course, when they hold you for 5 hours in the UK as a journalist, they don't treat you well, and you don't know how it's going to end, and it's terrifying. And then they steal all your shit. And now you have another Gray Zone journalist who's been arrested in Israel, and who knows, they want to lock him up for years, and who knows how that's going to go now. Free and fair democracy in Israel. Open society in Israel. The free and fair democracy of an apartheid state. Anytime someone says that Israel is a free and fair democracy, just double over laughing, okay? Because it's impossible to be a democracy in an apartheid state. Well, yeah, sure. Half the population they don't really count as human, but of the half we consider human, they all have democracy. They all get a vote. Oh, I see. Free and fair democracy. Anyway, let's hope that Jeremy gets out soon. I don't know. I don't know what'll happen. I mean, maybe, sometimes the U.S. sheepishly steps in and says, like, don't lock up our journalists forever, even if they hate the journalists. But I don't know. I mean, hopefully there's some pressure. Hopefully some people in big places who are pressured to actually get him out of prison. Here's another Gray Zone affiliated journalist who Gray Zone's Liam Cosgrove, who accidentally got allowed into the press briefing of the State Department. And I think this is the last time the Gray Zone will be allowed in the State Department press conference. And here's why. You'll notice this is what it looks like to not play their game, to not play their access game, to not play their I'm going to parrot your imperial talking points game. This is what it looks like.
Administration has financed a genocide in Gaza for the last year, and every day you're up there denying accountability for it. So, I mean, what gives you the right to lecture other countries on their moral?
So if you have a policy question for me, I'm happy to take it. If you want to give a speech, there are plenty of places in Washington where you can give a speech.
Yeah, but people are sick of the bullshit in here. I mean, like, it is a genocide. You are abetting it, and you are risking nuclear war in Ukraine for this proxy war.
Plenty of places to give a speech. Go ahead.
Yeah, and you'll notice he just immediately moves on because he can't answer those questions. But on top of that, if you don't talk in the way that's allowable in those press conferences, you don't use the word genocide, right? You act like they gave an answer when they don't give answers. You don't say you've been up there spouting bullshit. You don't use rude terms. It's laughable when there's a genocide being committed It's a U.S.-backed genocide, and yet we're supposed to sit here. And I mean, we as Americans, we as journalists, we as whatever are supposed to sit here and talk about it in polite terms. You know, you can ask us questions, but if we don't feel like answering, then you should let us not answer, and don't ask it in a rude way. Don't say what that we're spitting bullshit. And if you abide by all these carefully crafted, rules that aren't written down, the subtle rules, then we'll have you back in this press room, and then we'll answer your question or pretend to answer your questions. But you ask a question like this, you say the U.S. is committing genocide and you're spitting bullshit, and they're not back in the press room. They probably, even if they're allowed back in the press room, they won't be called on. So you got to play the game. And this gray zone journalist, Liam Cosgrove, did not play the game. Okay, I got a lot to get to, so I'm gonna got a lot of videos I want to get to. So let's get to let's start with we'll come back to Israel and Iran and everything. Let's jump to this is Ron DeSantis, Governor DeSantis on his, and by the way, if any of you are in Florida, I hope you're doing fine. I hope you're not underwater. Hope you haven't lost too much of your stuff, and I hope you are not about to get involved in a 3-year fight with an insurance company over whether your flooded house counts as flooded. Well, when we said we'd give you flood protection, we meant if you got flooded with donations from friends. We meant if you were flooded with lava, not water. Whatever fight you're gonna have with the insurance companies. But luckily this storm, Hurricane Milton, was not the worst case scenario. It ended up being category 3. Still, people died. People will continue to die because a lot of people die after hurricanes because they go out in flood waters. They try and fix power lines or whatever. So certainly it's not nothing. And anyway, here is Ron DeSantis giving his press conference this morning. I'm just going to analyze some of what he's saying.
Underway throughout the night. State search and rescue teams report at least 48 individuals have been rescued as of 0630. National Guard search and rescue teams have worked overnight and successfully executed rescues of families and pets on the West Coast and from the destruction of the tornadoes.
Oh, okay. So you're sending out a lot of government resources in order to go rescue people. Ron DeSantis, Mr. Republican, of course, and most of his views are the same as, say, Donald Trump or something. When these people rescue, when whatever government resource, whichever one goes and rescues these people, do they charge them immediately? Do they say, this will be as we get you out of this tree, it's going to be $1,000. As we get you out of this tree, it's going to be $5,000. Or do they just do it for free because that's how a fucking society should work? Is that what? So it's kind of like I don't know. We'll just make up a word like kind of socialist attributes where the government is funded by other means, whether it be tax dollars, whether it be modern monetary theory, whatever, funded by other means, and you go and you help people. And you don't even give them a bill when you pluck them out of a tree, when you find them floating down a river, and you say, you just do it. You just do it because what? What is it, DeSantis? Why would you do that? Oh, just because it's moral or it's right to help people in a society when you have the ability to help people? Is that what's going on? Because I'm pretty sure you were opposed to that. I'm pretty sure that the other 364 days a year when there's not a hurricane over someone's head, you and pretty much everyone else, including the Democrats in the federal government, don't give a shit about people who are struggling, about people who are maybe drowning, about people whose lives are destroyed, about people whose houses are washed away when the bank steals them. Yeah. Visually, it looks a little different. In one regard, you see a house drift away. In another regard, a cop and a bank show up and kick you out of the house. End result, the same. You got no house. Your life's destroyed. Your kids may be traumatized. Often it leads to the divorce when you have horrible situations like that. None of that we're going to come in and help. We don't. In fact, we're going to facilitate the reverse. We're going to facilitate the destruction, the stealing of your house with the banks. We're not going to help at all. But if it's a hurricane, that's different. Okay, that will help. And here's Ron DeSantis, Mr. Republican, telling you how many things the government has done to help people.
In the central and eastern parts of Florida, the Guard continues to work into the morning and have 31 rescue aircraft operational and hundreds of rescuers engaged in over 125 active missions in 26 different counties. Over 6,500 soldiers are deployed.
Amazingly, there's even, I know if you listen to podcasts, you can't see this, but in the corner, there's a sign language person for those who are hard of hearing. And I was unaware that Governor DeSantis cared about disabled people. Well, why would you put that on there? It's disabled people need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, even if they don't have any legs. That's what they need to do. So why would you put the sign language on the screen? You know, I thought you were all against helping disabled people, helping people who are poor or struggling or have mental health problems, or you're also opposed to declaring the climate crisis exists. So I don't understand why Ron DeSantis is acting like this actually happened. Like it would just make a lot more sense for him to spend the day sitting at home reading a book. What hurricane? Because if you don't believe climate change is happening, then you shouldn't believe this hurricane's happening. You shouldn't believe that these hurricanes that are going way later into the season, that are ramping up to Category 5 way faster than they used to, that are much larger than they used to be, they're the size of goddamn Florida now. You shouldn't believe any of that exists. So I don't understand why he's standing here. I don't even know what he's talking about. What hurricane?
Throughout the state, Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission has made land and water rescues in Pinellas, Hillsborough, and Pasco County. The State Guard has also been engaged in search and rescue, assisting with floodwater evacuations as well as damage assessments. There are currently 3.1 million accounts without power. There have been 635,000 restorations since Hurricane Milton hit Florida. The areas that have the most significant outages as of this morning are Hillsborough, 75% out, Hardy, 97% out.
And the state is working to give people power back. It's kind of offensive to be just sucking off the teat of state resources like that, isn't it? Like, I think you just leave the power out, because that's the more, self-sufficient way to be.
This morning is likely assess the damage and then begin restoration operations very quickly. And we appreciate everybody that's in that fight, because that's very important for a lot of people. Cut and toss have begun at First Light by the Florida Department of Transportation. 328 crews are active in the field with over 350 pieces of heavy equipment and trucks. 150 bridge inspectors were dispatched at First Light.
Bridge inspectors? All right, this is really getting offensive now. So you're telling me that the government is sending people out to decide whether our bridges are okay? That is, I do not want big government involved in my bridges. Get them out of here. I don't want them deciding if the bridges are okay. Well, you're also talking about regulation, which, deciding whether a bridge is built correctly or has problems, or, this is regulation, right? This is government regulation. This is a government coming in and deciding whether a bridge is fit to have cars on it. This is all just antithetical to everything these guys are supposed to believe. I mean, the regulation is offensive. And in so many other areas of life in that state across the country, but let's talk about that state for a minute, they have succeeded in getting rid of regulations, such as, for example, it's kind of redundant. I should just pick one of those. Anyway, such as, for example, I'm refusing to pick one. The what's it called, red tide a few years ago that was horrific, that covered all the beaches on the west coast of Florida, and dead fish, and was toxic, and you couldn't go swimming in it, but even people that just lived within a few blocks of the beach could get headaches and could feel ill from this horrible toxic algae bloom. Well, what caused that? Well, a big percentage of it has to do with all of the runoff that's allowed to go into the ocean, mainly runoff from big ag, mainly runoff from these massive farms where they have loads of pollution that they then pump into the ocean. And if you are a right-wing state like Florida, although a lot of states have this problem, if you're a right-wing state like Florida, you say, yeah, go ahead, pump it all into the ocean. Who cares? We don't want any of those regulators telling us that you can't dump whatever the fucking you want into the ocean. Just go for it. And so they just dump all of this, all this big farm, big ag runoff, and it creates these algae blooms that are toxic, horrific, kill wildlife, create ocean dead zones, just so bad for everything. They're even bad for Florida tourism. But no, that's all right to not have any regulation. All right, good to hear it. But here he is talking about bridge regulation. He's talking about people coming and telling us whether our bridges are fit. What's the difference? What's the difference? The only difference is that this was caused by a hurricane, and therefore he gets a chance to walk out there and act like he's being a really bold leader and protecting people. And so it's useful to his image. Whereas standing up against big ag is not, but he'd be going against his donations, which he doesn't want that. Big Bridge is not really a big donor to his election, so he doesn't have to worry about stepping on their toes. But you regulate big ag, and that could hurt all the millions he has pumping in. But David Fields in the comment wants to know if I hear about the gray zone journalist being kidnapped. Yes, David, we covered that at the beginning of the show. For those who missed it, the gray zone journalist Jeremy Lafredo has been kidnapped by Israel, which counts. Doesn't that count as a hostage? I think Israel just grabbed another hostage is what happened. Okay, before I get to, I'm about to get to Boris Johnson sounding like a fool again. I know that's going to be shocking to you, but I wanted to play this clip. And a little bit later, we're going to yet again. And I know it's this is becoming a trend, but it's worth it. Yet again, we are going to rip Piers Morgan limb from limb with a little help from Mohammed Hijab. Anyway, but before we get to that, let's play some Boris Johnson on Fox News, because why not turn to one of the most pathetic politicians who's ever lived, who just always wants war, always wants death and destruction, always wants Western empire. Why not turn to him for the answers on Israel and Iran?
Prime Minister. He also served as Foreign Secretary and Mayor of London, and as a Conservative Member of Parliament as well. He's the author of the new book, Unleashed. Watch. So you have spoken a lot about the battle between democracies and autocracies that is going on in the world, primarily Russia, Iran, and China, against the great countries of the United States and the United Kingdom and a lot of Europe. So when you look at this moment, does it make sense at this moment for the United States and the UK to bond with Israel and help them to take out these nuclear sites?
What a nice way to phrase that question. Is it good for the U.S. and Britain to bond with Israel? Oh, you mean to fund and arm a genocide? Is that what you mean by bond? Man, I've bonded with some people. I've had some pretty good friends. Never once did my bonding with them mean I was facilitating a genocide, but sure, why not?
Look, I think that UK, US, and Israel are all allies and friends, and we're all democracies. And that's the difference.
Catch that? Israel's a democracy. I know I already covered it earlier on the show, but an apartheid state cannot be a democracy. When you have half of the population in the region is not allowed to be a citizen, is not allowed all the same rights, and basically cannot vote in the elections, or many of them cannot, that's no democracy. Okay? So the idea we're all democracy, not to mention they just arrested, they just black-bagged a U.S. journalist. We're all free and fair democracies. U.S., Britain. Dude, we're the farthest thing from it. Then, of course, there's the U.S., which I don't think I need to remind you guys how much the U.S. is not a democracy. How much we are bought off by billionaires. I mean, hell, one of the people running for president is a billionaire. The others are just multimillionaires.
Difference between us and Hamas, Hezbollah, and the regime in Tehran, and whatever people.
Don't forget, everybody, if it's a country you agree with, then it's a democracy. It's the nation of Israel. It's the United States. If it's a country you hate and is evil, then it's the regime of Iran, the regime of Russia, the Russian regime. In the U.S., it's the United States. It's the democracy. It's the never regime, right? Only evil places have regimes.
People say about Israel, whatever people say about the tragedy that's been unfolding in Gaza or in Lebanon.
The tragedy, how's that for passive voice? The tragedy that has been unfolding in Gaza. Wow, that's above and beyond passive voice. There's no subject, so it's not Israel doing it. Who knows who's doing it? But there's no one doing it at all. It's just been unfolding. It's just a thing that unfolds. It just like your life. Your life is just a thing that unfolds. Just unbelievable. The phrasing, what he meant to say was Israel's committing genocide in Gaza. What he said was the situation unfolding in Gaza.
The heart bleeds for the people there, but
your heart bleeds for the people that are in the unknown unfolding situation. It always sucks when someone gets stuck in an unfolding.
In the end, Israel is trying to deal with people who want to wipe them off the map, wipe the Jewish state, wipe the Jewish people off the map.
No. No, in so many regards. First of all, he did the thing that Israel loves to do, which is Israeli propaganda, which all Jewish people, like myself, are apparently Israelis. Not true, okay? First he said wipe Israel off the map, and then he said wipe the Jewish people off the map because, oh yeah, all Jews are Israel. Is that right? That's funny. That's news to me. I had no idea I was Israel. But beyond that, this is the projection. This is the U.S. and Israel as they commit genocide around the world, and genocidal regimes are well known for their strong abilities of projection, of taking what it is you're doing and saying the other guy's doing it. So apparently, Hamas with their little rockets that have killed essentially no one since October 7th, that's equivalent to Israel literally wiping them off the map, literally destroying and clearing Gaza. And while Netanyahu literally held up a map of Israel before October 7th, a few days before October 7th in front of the UN that showed Gaza and the West Bank removed from the map, wiped from the map. That's what Netanyahu does. So he's literally wiping them off the map. But no, Boris Johnson wants you to think that it's everyone else who wants to wipe Israel off the map.
And that's very, very hard to deal with. And I think the lesson of the last few years is that the democracies of the world, the freedom-loving countries need to come together and stand up for our values. And that
freedom-loving countries. And he's including a country that has 2.2 million people, although that's lower now. It's more like 2 million people because they've killed 200,000 of them. 2 million people in an open-air prison. That's a freedom-loving people. That's a freedom-loving country. They had 5,000, pre-October 7th, they had 5,000 people, 5,000 Palestinians as hostages. That's a freedom-loving people. They just arrested a U.S. journalist. That's a freedom-loving people. And, of course, I'm not even getting into the United States, which he also mentioned on his list there, and the UK. The UK is arresting journalists right now, like Richard Medhurst, arresting him for being a terrorist because he's a journalist. That's freedom-loving people. The UK, at the behest of the US, held and tortured one of the most famous and one of the most accurate journalists and publishers in my lifetime, Julian Assange, for 12 years. That's a freedom-loving people that did that. The US, as most of you know, is the largest prison state in the world, on the planet Earth. It's a freedom-loving people, apparently. That's the largest prison state. Freedom-loving people.
That means we can't let Israel be destroyed in that way. We have to stand with Israel.
So does that mean that this is a moment in history for...
By the way, she keeps pressing him and everyone to just say, oh yeah, bomb Iran's nuclear reactors. That sounds safe, right? That sounds safe for the world, doesn't it?
Those Iranian nuclear facilities to be taken out.
If you look at the story of the Iranian nuclear development program over the last few years.
And so for those of you listening to the podcast, this is Fox News, and she now has a map on the screen of where the nuclear facilities are. This is just... I love when Fox or any of these mainstream networks do these segments where they act like they're asking questions, but really they're begging for some war or destruction or death or killing. Just please blow up these nuclear reactors. And who knows what would happen if you bomb nuclear reactor? I mean, it could be radiation. You could wipe out like whole areas of Iran could be radioactive for 10,000 years. I don't know what happens when you bomb nuclear reactors. It's not good. And here she is just begging for that. Just please bomb the nuclear reactors. And I'm sure Iran wouldn't respond to that at all, right? Iran, which has something like 10,000 missiles easily that they could fire at Israel and get most of them through the so-called Iron Dome. I'm sure Iran wouldn't respond at all if Israel just bombs all their nuclear reactors.
Is decade or more, you can see a story of grandmother's footsteps tiptoeing towards a breakout, towards the ability to use nuclear technology for military purposes, and Israel from time to time intervening to prevent that from happening with kinetic action.
God, he can't even control all of the euphemisms he's using. You know what he says? When he says Israel intervening with kinetic action, what he means is that Israel has been assassinating scientists on the streets of Iran for years. You can go read articles, some of them in mainstream media, many of them in mainstream media, about Mossad literally just gunning down scientists in Iran over the past many years, just in broad daylight. That's Israel taking what steps to kinetic action, whatever he's talking about. The truth is, Iran and the U.S. had a deal for Iran to not create nuclear weapons, and Iran was following every step of it, and Trump tore it up, and Biden has done absolutely nothing to return to that. And there's also the fact, like, why is it that Iran's not allowed to have nuclear weapons, but every other genocidal state, I'm not saying Iran's a genocidal state, but the other genocidal states like Israel and the United States, we're all allowed to have nuclear weapons. Israel has nuclear weapons. No one in their right mind thinks Israel does not have nuclear weapons. Israel is the only country in the world that has nuclear weapons that are not inspected at all because they pretend they don't have them. It's been admitted by some whistleblowers. It was admitted once in a document by the Pentagon, but they really didn't mean to admit it. So while other countries like the United States and Russia have nuclear weapons that are investigated and inspected, Israel just says, what nuclear bombs? It's horrifying. Anyway, I wanted to show you that clip of Boris Johnson being absolute scum, which is what he does. Okay, let's get. I might have to spend the rest of the show on this Piers Morgan interview, but anyway, before I do that, real quick, thank you all who've checked out my new podcast, Just Comedy. Really love the comments. I'm glad you guys have liked it. For those of you who haven't heard me talk about this, this is my brand new podcast. It's free to listen to. It's called Just Comedy. There's 2 episodes up. The 3rd episode will go up today. So you'll have 3 episodes to listen to. It is all my comedy segments coming out on podcast form. And I would love it if you could, first of all, check it out and, click subscribe or whatever they have on Spotify, etc., the bell icon, so you find out when new episodes come out, etc. But and you probably have to search for Just Comedy with Lee Camp. But I would love for you to click the rating button and give it a rating. We're up to 27 ratings, and I would love to get to 50 or 55 ratings in the next several days. So if you're able to help me out and do that, you can find it by searching any podcast platform, but you can also find it by going to linktree.com/Lee Camp. And that has a link to the Spotify as well. So hope you check it out. Give it a try. I know we need comedy. We need comedy in this world. I strongly feel that. And then the last thing I'll say before I get to the next video is I have my next Zoom comedy special. For those of you who've attended the last one, they seem to have been very popular. People have enjoyed them. So I'm doing another one. It's coming up in December 11th and 14th. It's I performed the show twice. So December 11th and 14th. And that's it. It doesn't go up online. It's not going to be free to watch later. So it's kind of this one and done thing. And special guests, John F. O'Donnell from Redacted Tonight, Naomi Carafani from Redacted Tonight doing some comedy, and Eleanor Goldfield performing music or spoken word. And thank you, Nicholas, for the donation. Thank you. Solidarity. No worries about Nicholas. Says sorry for not tipping. I never expect people to tip if you're hard times. So no worries. But if you want to grab a ticket, you can. The early bird cheaper version, which is $4 to grab a ticket, is only good for I think another week, and you can get that by going to leecamp.simpletix.com and then use the promo code when you're checking out. Use the promo code earlybird, one word, all caps, earlybird, as in early bird special, and you'll get it for $4, man, $4. It's like an hour and a half event via Zoom. You can watch it wherever you are. I'll be doing new comedy. Jonathan O'Donnell, Naomi Carafani, Eleanor Goldfield. It's a good time. Everyone's enjoyed the other ones. So I'd love for you to grab tickets. leecamp.simpletix.com. If you want the $1 off, remember the promo code earlybird. If you don't want the $1 off, then you don't have to remember shit. So there you go. leecamp.simpletix.com. Okay. And it may sell out, by the way. So just be prepared for that. Oh, and I should also mention, I do not have a live stream tomorrow. I have to travel. So no live stream tomorrow. I'll be back next week, though, with a bunch of live streams. And then I'll be traveling. Big plans in the works. I'll be traveling for about 3 weeks, and I'll tell you more about that coming up. Hopefully, I'll still be able to get out some videos to you, but my schedule will not be the normal schedule for 3 weeks. So be ready for that. But not next week. I'll be here, though. Okay. Let's get to Piers Morgan and Alan Dershowitz. They were annihilated by Muslim philosopher, scholar, and YouTuber Mohammed Hijab. And what he does to them is it's pretty unbelievable. There's a lot of talking over, so that kind of sucks, but you can still see what's going on here. And I'll break down some of it, but it's pretty amazing. So this is 9 minutes in, and this is basically the first time that he's gotten to talk. and he's basically debating Israel and Israel's strike on Iran. Well, let's just go. Let's just do it. Let's just go.
100, and that's on The Guardian, it's on Sky News, it's on all these kinds of platforms, coming out, and there's videographic evidence of him raping another man. I haven't heard condemnation from you.
Oh man, did I start at the wrong? I started the wrong place, but we're gonna get to that. I want to start here though. Sorry, 1 second.
See,
because you got to see this.
first of all, I would like to say that wherever we see suffering, wherever we see death and destruction, especially of young people, assault, sexual assault, we see Dershowitz to the rescue, the former defense attorney of Jeffrey Epstein, a man himself accused
I
of
knew
rape.
we would get to that. I knew. I
didn't give you permission to interrupt me. I didn't give you permission to interrupt me. I stayed quiet when you were talking.
Here's what I would say.
I stayed quiet when you were talking.
Hang on. Here's what I would say.
To the merits.
I didn't give you permission.
Listen, Mohammed, attacking a lawyer for defending people is a stupid argument.
Well,
right?
I'm not making an argument yet.
Well, you're just using an ad hominem attack straight off the top.
It's not an ad hominem. It's absolutely a justifiable thing to bring up. If the person you've brought into debate is completely immoral, is literally the lawyer of Epstein, and has all kinds of Epstein connections, I think it's completely legitimate to be like, let's just set the stage here. Let's let people know who this guy is. And then we can talk about whether he has a moral stance, a legally just stance on why it's fine for Israel to commit genocide. We can discuss that, but I think it's fine to say this is who this is. And you'll notice Piers Morgan dives in, throws himself on the grenade to defend Dershowitz.
Has he got leverage on you?
No, he's a brilliant lawyer.
I saw your picture with Maxwell. He's got leverage on you.
He's a brilliant lawyer.
Are you saying that because he's got leverage on you?
I met Ghislaine Maxwell for 5 minutes at a book launch.
You look very happy with her.
Well, I didn't know anything about her at the time, other than she was the daughter of the man that
We're talking about the biggest sexual scandal in the last 100 years.
Who I never met Jeffrey Epstein or ever knew him. Alan Dershowitz was wrongly accused of various things in relation to Jeffrey Epstein.
How do you know it's wrongly?
Because they've all been...
Why are you defending him?
They all turned out to be nonsense. He won a court case about it.
Why are you not looking at me when I'm speaking to you?
Well, I can turn to you, but there are three of us involved in this.
Yeah, you're speaking to me. So
okay, let me make things clear. Yeah. I never met Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah. I met Ghislaine Maxwell for 5 minutes.
You look very happy in that picture.
Okay, if you want to use that as an ad hominem attack,
why are you defending him?
Hang on, a picture taken in 2013.
He spoke for 3 minutes.
Anyway, I'll play some more clips, but you get the point. And by the way, it just keeps going back and forth like that. But I think one of the biggest things here, other than what a scumbag Dershowitz is, because Dershowitz was accused of many things connected to Epstein, some of which went to court, and I think he won some defamation thing in court about it because there was no evidence. But no evidence of something doesn't mean it didn't happen. But anyway, I think one of the most interesting parts of that is how quickly Piers Morgan jumps in to defend Dershowitz on the charges of him being a defender of Epstein, which he is. To this day, Dershowitz on TV, on camera, will defend Epstein, which is unbelievable and revolting. But anyway, that goes back and forth for a few minutes. So let's jump to... Then Hijab brings up the discussion of proportionality, which I think is an excellent point.
8 times more. If you want us to take you seriously, if you want us to take this coverage seriously, if you want us to take Western media seriously, then let's, for God's sake, talk about proportionality as your favorite word. We're talking about 30,000 people detained in prisons on the one hand, and 100 people who are hostages. And yet we have managed somehow to spend way more time proportionally.
You said 3,000 a minute ago. Which one is it? 3,000?
Sorry, 3,000.
That's not 30,000.
Not 30.
Okay,
3,000.
Get your numbers right if you're going to make that comment.
Okay, I misspoke.
Exaggerated
not a problem.
10 times.
Not a problem. He spoke about Iran. Let me ask you a question
before they get to the next question, that was an excellent point, which Piers Morgan somewhat successfully sidelined because Hijab misspoke on the number. He meant to say there's 3,000 Palestinians hostages that Israel has. Meanwhile, there's 100 Israeli hostages. Now, it's actually far more than 3,000. It's more like 10,000. There were 5,000 prior to October 7th. Israel has detained at least 5,000 more. So it's tough to get the numbers because Israel black bags a lot of these people. There's little accountability. But I imagine it's around 10,000. But anyway, whatever the number, whether it's let's talk the lowest possible number of 3,000, which he was saying. It is many, many times the number of hostages that Hamas is holding of Israelis. And he's got a point, which I have made many times, that most people do not make, which is, why do we spend all of this time talking about the 100 hostages in Gaza and essentially zero time talking about the thousands of hostages Israel's holding? And so I'm happy to see that point brought up. Unfortunately, it got sidelined, but this is yet again what a scumbag Piers Morgan is, that he'd rather sink that discussion by noticing that Hijab slipped up on the numbers than actually address the true accusation. But let's keep going.
Let me ask the question.
Sure, go ahead.
You guys try and debate it.
Go ahead.
At the moment, Alan Dershowitz is being very civilized in the way he's debating.
I'm sure he was going to say that.
You're just making
He might have leverage on you.
attacks and shouting all the
He's your
time.
friend.
No one can understand it when you
Have you
shout
met him
all the time.
before?
I know Alan well.
Oh, you know him well.
I respect him very much.
Oh, yes, you do.
He's one of America's top lawyers.
He's top lawyers.
Yeah, he
Aha,
is.
aha. And you're an unbiased person here on Central.
An unbiased person about Alan Dershowitz. Why?
Does he have leverage on you, Piers Morgan?
There's no leverage on me, no.
You've got a picture with Maxwell.
Yes, we can lay
Did you go to the island?
No, I've never been to the island. I've never met Jeffrey Epstein.
Be honest.
I never spent more than 5 minutes with
Be
Ghislaine
honest.
Maxwell. I've answered you. So what part of that wants to...
Do you condemn him being on the island? He's your good friend.
You can ask
No, I'm
Alan
asking, do you condemn
Dershowitz
him?
about Jeffrey Epstein.
You had a massage.
He represented him.
He said he didn't take his shorts off.
Do you know what?
That's
None
what
of us
he
have
said.
got anything to...
I know it's getting a little off the rails, but it's well worth it. It's well worth it. I like, one of my favorite lines is, do you condemn the fact that your guest, who you say you highly respect, has been on Epstein's island, said he got massages from Epstein's women, which we know most were sex trafficked to these islands. So even if nothing more than a massage happened, you're talking about a massage from someone who was sex trafficked. It's just... And do you condemn him? No, he doesn't condemn him. He just called him a friend, and he said he highly respects him. Oh, really? You highly respect him? Okay, let's get to another point. I love this one about Iran. Sometimes it's tough because there's so much back and forth and so much talking over each other. Sometimes it's tough to, I don't know, even see what's being said, but
Oh, fantastic.
by the way, something I skipped over is that Alan Dershowitz then says he's going to sue Hijab for libel. He says, I'll see you in court. And Hijab says, bring it on, which good for him. But
okay.
Do you support Iran?
Okay, well, let me answer your question. Iran was attacked on April the 1st, right? It was attacked. The embassy of Iran was attacked in Syria by Israel. After that, on the first occasion, they then sent missiles and drones, correct? Now, my question to you is, does Iran have a right to defend itself? And if so, what is the proportionate response? Because you see, I've been having a moral quandary about the issue. Piers Morgan, what's a proportionate response for Iran?
by the way, that was he was fucking with Piers Morgan because Piers Morgan says he has a moral quandary about what's happening in Gaza. So Piers Morgan will essentially defend genocide, but every once in a while say, I have a moral quandary about it. I don't think Israel should be behaving like this. And he'll say those type of things. So he was mocking him right there. But that's a great point. Does Iran have a right to defend itself? Because all we hear all day long is Israel has a right to defend itself. Let's hear Piers Morgan's very clear answer on this.
I'll tell you what I think about Iran. I think Iran is an unbelievably nefarious place which has been fueling Hamas, the Houthis, Hezbollah for many years with a joint joint ideology that they want to eradicate Israel in any way they can.
Okay.
So I think Iran is one of the most despicable regimes in the world. I also think that right now the Iranian regime is in serious danger.
You look completely discombobulated.
What do you mean?
You look disheveled.
I'm telling you what I think of Iran.
I'm asking you, do they have a right to defend themselves? Do you think they have a right to defend themselves? Both of you can answer the question. Do they have a right to defend? They were attacked. The sovereign nation was attacked. My question is, does it have a right to defend?
Iran has been fueling attacks on Israel now for what, 40 years?
I've been having a moral quandary about this. I've been having a moral quandary about Iran.
Have you?
Yeah, moral quandary, yes. Moral quandary, I don't know. Do they have a right to defend themselves? And if so, what is the proportionate response?
You're supporting Iran, to be clear.
I'm asking you. No,
Are you supporting Iran?
I'm not supporting. I'm antithetical to many of these organizations for my own purposes. But my question
do you support the Iranian regime?
Not
See, I wish he didn't let him change it, because he lets Piers Morgan right there. I mean, he's doing great. I love how he keeps saying this is what Piers Morgan will do to people: is he'll ask a question that's very clear but he's trying to get them caught up, and he'll keep asking it over and over while they try and talk. But in this case, he's flipped the tables on him. Piers can't answer the question, because if you say Iran has a right to defend itself, all of a sudden Iran's strike on Israel was justified. They have a right to defend themselves. But he can't say that. So instead he goes off on his little ramble rant about how Iran is nefarious and they're not good. And he can't answer the question. Neither of them can answer the question.
Conditionally, but I support their right.
What conditions do you agree with them about?
Their right to defend themselves. You believe they have a right to defend themselves?
No, they're terrorists.
Oh, so they don't have a right to defend themselves? Iran does not have a right to defend itself.
They do, but they're not the one.
So wait, did you catch that? Piers Morgan said, yes, they do. And well, first he said, no, they don't. And then he said, yes, they do. In the span of 3 seconds. Do they have a right to defend themselves? No, they're a terrorist organization. So they don't have a right to defend. Oh, yes, they do. Oh, okay.
Well, what is proportionate response?
They're not the ones.
What's the proportionate response?
Okay.
No,
can I answer it?
You asked this question to the
You're just going to keep talking. Can I answer it?
What's the proportionate response?
The proportionate response to Iran is to stop them trying to destroy Israel through their proxies, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Hamas. What they've been trying to do for many years.
What is a proportionate response of Iran after their embassy was smashed and destroyed in Syria and 16 people were killed? What's the proportionate response?
Well, what about the proportionate response to everything Iran's done?
Which is against the Vienna Conventions.
What about the response to everything Iran has been doing?
What did Iran do to Israel? Who did they kill? Who did they?
They never killed anybody.
Anyway, it goes back and forth like this for a while. But I love that point of, can Iran defend itself? Oh, well, we can't answer that question because that goes against the U.S.-Israeli propaganda. Let's see. Let's get to one or two more. What was it again? Here we go.
How many?
They never have.
Well, hold on. How many civilians died on October the 7th?
Civilians about 800.
Oh, sure. All right.
But hang on.
Hold on.
But nearly 7,000 more were wounded.
Sure.
7,000.
What happened on the 23rd of September?
Were wounded.
What happened on the 23rd of September?
7,000.
Okay, sure.
Think about that number.
Okay, no problem.
That's the scale of people who were attacked on that day.
Are we talking over each other? It's 2-on-1 now.
8,000 people were attacked.
No problem. On the 23rd.
One of the most horrendous terror attacks.
Is this going to be a monologue or is it a dialogue?
History. I'm telling you some facts.
I know the facts.
You may not like it, but I'm telling you them.
Okay, I'm telling you. On the 23rd of September, Israel attacked Lebanon. How many people died? How many civilians died, according to the Lebanese health, the Ministry of Health?
I believe it's about 2,000 was the last recorded number I saw.
No, in one day. On the 23rd of September.
Including combatants, including many combatants.
No, on the 23rd, how many died? How many died? Why don't we have a year commemorating the 23rd of a year commemorating the 23rd of September? Since we're having a year commemorating the 7th of October, and about 600 people died, 650 people, civilians died on that day. That's quite close, isn't it?
Piers Morgan, if you look at Piers Morgan's face, he realizes he's been nailed. He has no answer to this. You have 600 or 800 civilians killed on October 7th, but you have 2,000 killed in Lebanon on one day. And yet the 600 or 800 on October 7th are the only ones that matter. Because they count as Westerners. I know Israel's not really Western, but Israel counts as part of the Western regime. They count as part of the U.S. empire. They count as part of the U.S. hegemony. They are the white people in the region. So therefore, their deaths matter far more than the deaths of anyone else. The deaths of Gazans, the deaths of Lebanese. Those people don't matter nearly a fraction of the more white, more European, more Jewish Israelis. Those are the ones that actually matter to U.S. imperial propaganda. And so, yeah, you talk about October 7th forever because it was a horrific terror attack. But apparently the 2,000, far more, that were killed on September 23rd in Lebanon don't matter. And they're a footnote They're a footnote because they're not, they're really like partial people. They don't really count. They count as like 0.2% of a, or 0.2 of a person, Israelis count as 2.5 of a person.
We don't know the civilians. They don't distinguish between
8,000 people were attacked.
We're not talking about attack. We're talking about dead. What's wrong with you? Why are you not looking at me again? You're crying. Are you crying?
Because the viewers are seeing the three of us together.
I see that there's tears in your eyes.
There are no tears in my eyes.
What's going on?
There's a slight sense of exasperation.
Sure, there should be. Because you are employing...
What do you think I am?
I think you said it yourself with your interview with Mehdi Hassan. I think you're just biased. You talked about tribes.
Who am I biased against?
You're biased against anything anti-Western. Clearly, you said
what a ridiculous statement.
Because you said it yourself. You said the reason why you have such and such a view with Russia.
Do you think I was biased when I led the media campaign against the Iraq War?
No, I think you
was I biased against brown people.
You were good then.
Was I? I was good then because you agreed with me.
Sure.
Well, I love that Piers Morgan brings up. I don't even know. I don't remember him doing anything against the Iraq War, but whatever. Let's say he did. I'm sure he did, but. It doesn't matter. Like, yeah, he's biased. Everything he says is biased against non-Westerners, against things that don't serve the U.S., British, Israeli empire. That's what his bias is. So what if he stood up against the Iraq War? It doesn't really matter. That's what he did then. This is who he is now. A piece of utter garbage. It doesn't matter if you did something 20 years ago that was slightly positive. Anyway, I wish there were some more clear moments. A lot of it is this kind of bickering back and forth, but that is his interview with Mohammed Hijab, and he did an excellent job. I think he did better than, in terms of countering all of this garbage, I think he did better than most, because it's not easy. It's not easy to combat especially when you're being essentially double teamed, because Piers Morgan counts as a largely pro-Israel. He'll say something every once in a while where he goes, I don't feel, I'm worried about the Gaza people, or it's like he'll say throw something in there, but he's basically all pro-Israel. So it's really 2 against 1, which is how he prefers it. And, he's got this goon, Alan Dershowitz, there with him, who keeps threatening to sue the other guest. So, all right, let me play one more clip. This is just a 1-minute clip from John Kiriakou talking about the U.S. and our endless wars. Many of you know John Kiriakou, the CIA whistleblower. I know him. I saw him just the other day. He's doing well, although he just lost his job as well because he was the Russian-funded radio network Sputnik. He had a show on there, and they have shut that down because they don't know if the U.S. is going to arrest them for being media, which, whether you love Russia or not, isn't really the point. The point is, this is supposed to be a free country where you can have media outlets, and it doesn't matter what country they are. This is supposed to be a free country where you can cover topics, and it doesn't matter how you cover them. This is supposed to be that kind of free country, and we have changed it. Now, I know, whatever. Whenever I say we changed it, I feel like that makes it sound like you go back 100 years and we were just completely free. No. 100 years ago, they were sticking, communists and non-communists on boats and shipping them to Russia because they didn't like what they were saying. So I'm not acting like we had freedom, but in the past couple of decades, something has changed, and especially in the past few years, where now even media organizations are not allowed to operate in the United States, and it is horrific. And anyway, so John Kiriakou's lost his job recently as a radio personality, but he used to be in the CIA. He became a whistleblower because he revealed their torture program. He spent 2 years in prison because he revealed their torture program, and he is the only CIA CIA employee who spent any time in prison for the CIA's illegal torture program. Not one of the torturers, not someone who signed off on the torture, not someone who came up with the torture, not someone who approved the torture, not someone who did the torture. No, the guy who revealed the torture is the only one to have ever gone to prison for the CIA's torture program. Anyway, that's not exactly what this is about. He's talking about the U.S. war economy.
Here in the Washington area, we have more millionaires per capita than any other place in America, more than in Silicon Valley. And this is a post 9/11 phenomenon where we have transitioned into a permanent wartime economy. We spend more on so-called defense than the next 8 largest countries combined. Well, that's not just, the president writes checks and just sends checks around. All that money goes to defense and intelligence contractors. And so if we were to suddenly become the country of peace, like we always profess to be, the country of human rights and respect for individual liberties, the economy would literally collapse. And so this is what we've done for ourselves.
So important points there about the amount of money. And I have called our Pentagon the largest money laundering machine in the world in the history of humanity, because it takes tax dollars, and whether they're real tax, it doesn't really matter. You get the point. You know what I'm saying. It takes the money in the U.S. and it filters it through the national defense, quote unquote, the big red letters that say national defense. It puts it through that machine, and then it spits $1 trillion a year, most of it, or whatever, 70%, into the pockets of contractors, lobbyists, other affiliated groups that facilitate the Pentagon, trillions of dollars. And that makes it this giant money laundering machine. Whereas if the U.S. government were to say, hey, we're just going to go pay this guy to build, big bombs, that looks bad. But if Congress says we're going to allot this much money to Pentagon, and then the Pentagon is going to quietly out the back door send that money to the guy to make bombs, and then those bombs are going to be used by the Pentagon to blow up innocent people, that's fine. So you just add that one little step, one little middleman, and it is the largest money laundering scheme that the world has ever known. And so he's talking about how it's such a pivotal part of our economy because it is trillions of dollars. And now, of course, if you were to take all that money and instead put it into everything else, helping people, healthcare, housing, infrastructure, etc., if it's switching to a climate sustainable model for the world, if you would use all that for that, you could keep the economy going. So it's not like the money needs to just disappear. It could go to positive things instead of death and destruction. But we're run by sociopaths, so that's not where they're gonna put things. He also mentioned that the U.S. spends more on military than the next 8 countries combined. And it fluctuates depending on the year. Sometimes it's the next 8 combined. Sometimes it's the next 10 combined. But what I have hardly heard anyone else mention, I mention it sometimes, is that we also spend as much on military as the bottom 170 countries combined. I think it might be 180 countries combined. Now, a lot of the ones at the bottom of the list don't spend anything on military. You what? They can have a life and like a people in a society without military? How could that be? But anyway, we spend as much as 170 countries combined. There's only 200 countries in the world, or 195 or whatever. We spend as much as 170 combined. It's insanity. It's pure insanity. It is absolute psychopaths running the show here. Okay, Sherry asked me a question, which I'll answer real quick. She said, are you going to Tibet? Yes, I am. That's where I'm going in my 3 weeks of travel is Tibet, and I'll be bringing you more info on that, hopefully some cool videos and everything. But yeah, I'll bring you more on that later. But thank you guys for joining me today. I can't be on here tomorrow, but I can't do the live stream tomorrow because I have to travel for something else. But I will be back Monday, and you all are amazing. And I love you all for supporting this show. And check out the Just Comedy podcast on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get podcasts. Give it a rating and grab your tickets to the next comedy Zoom show, December 11th and 14th. You can grab tickets at leecamp.simpletix.com. And I will see you Monday. Keep fighting.
Well, brother, I salute you, though, man. You're one of the few that bring together this tremendous artistic talent and still be in such deep solidarity with oppressed people.
It's an honor to be here because I'll tell you, Lee, you have one of the funniest shows on television, bar none.
It's an enormous pleasure to be here. While I was waiting, I was leafing through your wonderful book.
The same to you. I love your show. Be happy to come back anytime.
Lee, this is one of the great honors of my long career, just to be in the same earth with you.
I'm sure.
We're just so blinded. We have so many blinders on because our society doesn't want us to know things. And so it takes shows like your show, and
it is clearly designed to eradicate.
Hey, good to see you.
Hey, Jill, how are you? Julian, thanks for joining me. Honor to have you, brother.
Consumerism is a theory that people should behave this way to help each other. It's not.
Mr. George Galloway, thank you so much for joining me in these dark times.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you so much, Lee, for having me on. Keep fighting. Ha ha.